Welcome to Pure Aqua's Learning Center. In this series of videos, we will cover top-mounted filter control valves. This particular video will talk about the Fleck 5812 filter control valve, which is manufactured by Pentair. This video will cover 5 main points. The first will be the valve overall specifications. The second will be the installation with its accessories. The third will be programming. The fourth will be troubleshooting. And the fifth will be service and rebuild kits. Pure Aqua has chosen the Fleck 5812 control valve for its extreme reliability and cost effectiveness. It has many features such as a fiber reinforced polymer valve body for superior strength and durability, has a continuous service flow rate of up to 43 gallons a minute and a backwash rate of 33, which translates into a maximum size of a 24-inch diameter tank. This valve can be programmed for a 3 or 5 cycle control regeneration cycle. Plumbing options or connections include a 3/4 inch, 1 inch, or 1 1/4 inch MPT, BSP, sweat, and CPVC. The valve can be equipped with 2 different types of controllers. The first is the XTR2, which is a touchscreen LCD display controller, or the SXT, which is an LCD display with buttons for programming. The valve can operate at a pressure range of 20 to 125 psi. The mounting base comes in 2 different sizes of either 2.5 inch or 4 inch. The distributor pilot comes in 4 different sizes, and the most common one Pure Aqua uses is the 32 millimeter. The valve out of the box comes equipped as shown. We have our valve body cover, our LCD controller with its buttons on the front side, and on the rear side we have our 3 connection points: the inlet, the outlet, and the drain line connection. The power inlet connection is shown here on the bottom, which we will show with a detailed view later. Aside from the tank and media loading, the steps discussed in this segment of the video will cover everything that is needed to get this valve and filter online and installed. Starting from the left-hand side, we have our drain line flow control assembly, our optional bypass assembly, our straight connectors, which shown here are 1 inch MPT. We have sample drain line flow control washers, the connector assembly, power supply, distributor screen, and the riser pipe, which is 32 millimeters in diameter. Step 1 of the valve installation will be installing the retainer kit inside the valve here. So this comes with 2 parts. You have the retainer ring and the O-ring. Step 1 is to put the retainer ring inside, and you're going to hear a clipping noise, which means it's securely fastened, and it will rotate but cannot come out. From there, you would install the O-ring between the valve and the retainer ring. Once the O-ring is securely fastened, Pure Aqua uses the Di-11 Corning lubricant, which is insoluble in water and safe for membrane systems, and you would put a good amount here inside the valve. Step 2 of the valve installation would be installing the 32 millimeter distributor screen on the valve body. As you can see here, there's this locking mechanism that would line up with the valve body and would allow this screen to lock in place. Once you line it up, you would position this, make sure it's nice and flat and it's centered correctly. You would turn this counterclockwise, and once this is properly installed, it cannot be pulled out. If needed to be removed, you turn it clockwise, pull out, and it is removed. So installation is counterclockwise. Once it's locked properly, it cannot be pulled out. Step 3 of the valve installation would be installing the inlet and outlet connections on the back side of the valve. When looking at the valve from the back side, it is very important to note the left side is the inlet and the outside, and the right side is the outlet. It's a common misconfusion where people are installing these backwards, which can damage the internals of the valve and damage systems downflow. So again, the left side is the inlet, the right side is the outlet when looking at the valve from the back side. Now turning the valve back down, we will cover the optional bypass. So the bypass essentially allows the valve to be completely bypassed if need to be serviced. So this would be installed directly on here, and the connectors would be installed on the front side of the bypass. We will cover the installation without the bypass installation, as this is how Pure Aqua's systems are equipped without this feature. When installing these connectors, same as the O-ring on the inside of the valve. These will need to be lubricated properly with the same type of lubricant. Installed on here, lined up, and this is a union style connection where you tighten this hand tight without the use of any tools. Once this is completely hand tight, the inlet connector is properly installed and assembled. The installation of the outlet side of the valve is essentially the same way as the inlet. You would lubricate the O-ring, line it up and push in the connector, hand tighten the union, and once that's complete, your inlet and outlet connections have been properly installed and are complete. Step 4 of the valve installation will be the preparation of the drainline flow control assembly kit. As shown, this is the blank kit without any washers. There are 4 pieces that come with this kit. The first piece is your elbow connector and 3 different size washer housings. Each housing is a different size for a particular reason. The smaller housing handles washers up to 7 gallons a minute. The mid-size housing would handle washers up to 25 gallons a minute, and the larger housing handles washers up to 45 gallons a minute. Step 1 of this preparation process would be to lubricate the O-ring on the retainer ring here where the flow control washer will be installed. We have decided to use the mid-size flow control housing, as this is the most common housing Pure Aqua uses for its filters. So it's very important to note that many different flow rates exist for these washers, and the specific washer must be selected based on the media and filter size. This particular one is 12 gallons a minute, but it is completely irrelevant for your installation. Once the proper flow control is selected, you would pop this into place, and it's important to note that the text is shown, it can be seen when installed, as this is the proper way of installation, as this side is smoother than the opposite side. Once the drain line housing assembly has been completely installed and configured, you would of course need to install this onto the valve body. Before doing so, you would still need to lubricate our last O-ring here, which is the O-ring shown on the outside of the valve body. And again, this is with the same lubricant we mentioned in the beginning of the video, the Dow 11 Corning. Before installation, you would remove the clip. Once the clip has been removed, you would insert the housing into the valve. And once that's done, you would reinsert the clip to make sure this housing is securely fastened. After the drainline flow control assembly has been properly secured and the clip installed, you will notice there's a small label on the back side of the valve that says drain flow. Ignore the injector here for now, as this will be discussed in our softener valve series. Now, on the drain flow side here, you would just clearly write down or mention what flow control flow rate was used, just for future service and reference. Step 5 of the valve installation would be the connection of the power supply or transformer. It is important to know there are several different types of power supply. We have selected the US version of this power supply, where it comes with the standard 110 connectors. However, a different type of power supply exists with different connectors based on the country of installation. Now, this is a 100 to 240 volt 50-60 Hz power supply that is very convenient, as it can be installed all over the world. When installing the power supply or transformer onto the valve, you must identify the port location, which is on the left side of the valve, and it is almost hidden here, but once located, you will insert the connection into the valve and securely fasten that, and once that's installed, this part of the installation is complete. In this particular video, we made the assumption that the riser pipe has been properly installed, centered inside the tank, cut to the right length, and the media has been properly loaded. So with that assumption, we'll proceed on providing instructions on how the valve can be installed on top of the tank. This is to demonstrate how the riser pipe gets inserted into the valve once it's on top of the tank. I'm going to remove the screen just for detail purposes. However, this screen stays installed during the installation process on the tank head. The riser pipe gets inserted into the center part of the valve. And it's very important that, as mentioned, this part gets lubricated as we showed earlier. So as you can see, the riser pipe gets inserted here, and it will stop once it hits the top of the valve. Now, so to kind of demonstrate this, when the screen is installed, you insert here. The screen helps line up the valve. You push the valve down, and the riser pipe gets fully inserted. Step 6 of the valve preparation before it is installed on the tank head is lubricating the outer ring here on the bottom part of the valve. So it is very important to lubricate this O-ring so it stays on and it helps properly seal the valve and the tank when properly installed. The valve gets inserted onto the riser pipe. It's very important to make sure the valve is perfectly straight to ensure the O-ring does not tear off. That was shown earlier. Once that's done, the valve gets threaded on to the tank head. Again, it's very important to make sure there's no cross thread here and the valve gets installed correctly. Once the valve is tightened, and of course this valve must be installed hand tight. Once you reach a point where you feel the valve is tight on the tank, you go about a quarter turn or half turn and stop there. Tightening more can actually damage the valve and the tank head. Part 3 of our tutorial video will cover the programming details of this Fleck 5812 valve. Before the valve is plugged in, of course the screen is off. And once that's plugged in, you will hear the motor inside move, and that means the valve has turned on. And once the valve turns on, you will see the valve flashing with the time of day. So if the valve hasn't been turned on for a while, it should read 12 o'clock. Our programming section of this video will cover 3 main topics. Topic number 1 will be setting the time of day. Topic number 2 would be the user programming, and finally it would be our master programming. So beginning with setting the time of day, our valve now reads 12:02 p.m. and the valve just automatically cycles between the day override and the time of day. The day override will be discussed shortly, and that will be explained. So to set the time of day, it's very simple. There's 3 buttons, and you use the right 2 arrows. There's an arrow pointing up and an arrow pointing down. So to increase the time of day, let's say for example our local time here now is 3:30. We would hold the up arrow, and you hold that for a few seconds, and it should start increasing the minutes, and then from there it starts increasing the increments and how fast it changes the time. So once we hit 3:30, we let go of the arrow our fingers on, and we would hit this extra cycle button to get out of the time of day setting. So now you'll see that it will flash to 3:30, and we have set the correct time of day. There are 3 main steps to the user programming mode. Step number 1 would be to access the user programming mode by holding down the up and down arrow simultaneously for 5 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So after 5 seconds, the screen should change whatever is displayed on there, and the first setting would be our day override. So step number 2 would be to set our day override, which is how often the backwash occurs on this valve. So for example, if we set a day override of 4 days, the filter valve will backwash our filter media every 4 days, and if we set it at 5 days, it will backwash every 5 days, and so on. Now the day override setting should be set based on the application and media type. So we cannot really specify a specific day override, but for the sake of this demonstration, we will keep it set at 5 days and move on to the next step. To move on to step number 3, you'll hit the extra cycle button, and once that's properly pressed, the third step of this process would be the regeneration time, or RT. The RT, as I mentioned, is the regeneration time, and that specifies what time of day you want this valve to backwash the media. So for example, if you know your application or plant has downtime, let's say around 2 a.m. in the morning, we would recommend to set the backwash or regeneration time at 2 a.m. So we will set this at 2 a.m. and when that's set at 2 a.m., to save the setting and exit out of the user programming, you would hit the extra cycle button once. It is very important to note that if you have multiple valves operating together before an RO system, let's say you have a media filter and a carbon filter, it's very important that you set these regeneration times with maybe 30-minute increments or 1-hour increments, so you ensure that these valves are not backwashing at the same time. So for example, if you have a multimedia filter, in the beginning part of the process, you would set that at, let's say, 12 a.m. And if you have a carbon filter downstream, you would set that at 1 a.m. So there's no overlap between the regenerations. And with that, we have concluded our user programming settings. So now to discuss the master programming mode, which will be the third section of our programming part of this tutorial. Step number one of this master programming mode is to access the master programming mode. And to do so, you must set the time of day at 12:01 p.m. Press the extra cycle button once that's set at 12:01. So regardless of what time of day your valve is set at, you must set it at 12:01 in order to access the user or master programming mode. Now, once it's set at 12:01 p.m., you would hold the up and down arrows simultaneously for about 5 seconds. And after 5 seconds, the first set point will be the DF. So the DF stands for display format, and that basically allows you to set the display format in terms of gallons or liters. So Pure Aqua sets its valves with the gallons as our display format. Step number two would be to set the valve type. Since this is a Fleck 5812 valve, we have it set at 5812. The other options would be a 5810 or a 5800. So since this is a 5812, again, you set it at 5812. The next step would be the RF, or the regenerant flow. This specifies what kind of cam is installed inside of this valve. So some of the sample set points, you have filter, you have DF2B. The other settings would be used for other types of, maybe softeners or other types of application. So since we are talking about media filters, our set point will be filter, which is FLTR. The next setting would be the CT setting, which is the control type. So there are 4 different options. You have the time clock, day of week, meter delayed, or meter immediate. So if your valve is equipped with a flow meter, you would use setting number 1 or setting number 2, which is FI or FD. So this valve does not have a meter, and it's very typical to have media filters without a meter. So Pure Aqua uses the TC setting, which is the time clock, which means it will refer to the time of day setting or regeneration time to backwash this valve. So we will set our CT setting at TC, which is time clock. The next setting would be the day override. So as mentioned previously, the day override specifies the time or the number of days between each regeneration. So 5 days means the valve will backwash the filter every 5 days. If you need to change that, you can use the up and down arrow to set a different day override. So we will keep it set at 5 for the sake of this demonstration. The next step would be to set the regeneration time. So as mentioned before, the regeneration time specifies what time of day the valve will initiate a regeneration or backwash. Now, again, we recommend that the regeneration time is set where you have minimal usage for water for each particular application or plant. And if there are more than one valve operating together, there must be certain increments or time slots between each regeneration time. For example, a media filter would be set at 12 a.m. while a carbon filter would be set at 1 a.m. The next step would be to set the backwash duration. So based on each application and media type, the backwash duration would be set. So the 10 means the backwash would take place over a span of 10 minutes, or the length of backwash would be 10 minutes. So typically our media filters, carbon, green sand, and so on, Pure Aqua would recommend setting this at 12 minutes. Again, this can be fine-tuned based on application and specific media if needed. The next step would be to set the rapid rinse. So the rapid rinse it's basically doing a service directional flow, but bypassing all the water to the drain. This comes factory preset at 10 minutes from Fleck. Pure Aqua recommends setting this at 5 minutes, as we believe this is the most efficient use of the rapid rinse cycle and minimal waste of water. The final step would be the relay output. This valve comes equipped with a relay, and the relay comes configured as off, and if needed, this can be configured as on or enabled, EB. Now, the benefit of having a relay is you can take an output that would basically specify or energize the output once a regeneration is in process. This can be connected to control panels such as RO systems or building monitoring systems that would notify the operators of when this specific valve is in backwash. So typically we equip our valves with these relays and we enable them. So after enabling the relay, you would hit the extra cycle button again to proceed to the next step. Now to set up or configure the relay, there are two settings. You select the start time and the end time of when you want this relay to be energized. So if you wanted to energize or provide a signal of when the regeneration starts, the ST setting would be put at 0 minutes. And if you want the end time to end when the regeneration ends, a quick tip is just to hit the down button twice, and that will basically add up the backwash time plus the rinse time. And since we have set our backwash time at 12 minutes, our rinse time at 5 minutes, you see a time here of 17 minutes. And once you have cycled through all these settings, the final setting again will be setting the relay end time. And once that's completed, you press the extra cycle button, and with that, that concludes our master programming setting tutorial. Section 4 of this Fleck 5812 tutorial video will cover some troubleshooting and diagnostic steps. There are 5 error codes that can be displayed on this Fleck valve: error code 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we will discuss the error type, the cause, and some diagnostic steps such as a reset and recovery. So with error code 0, the error type specifies that the motor has stalled or there's a cam sensor error. The cause of this is there's no state changes in the optical sensor, which are detected for about 6 seconds. One quick fix can be to unplug the unit and plug it back in and allow the controller to attempt to find the position again. Once the unit is plugged back in, we advise the operator should observe its behavior, and if this error reoccurs, unplug the unit, put it into bypass, and contact technical support for further diagnostics. Error code number 1. So for error code number 1, the error type refers to a motor run-on error and there's a cycle sense error. Now the cause of this can be an undesired optical sensor state which could have occurred. This is a non-critical error, and there could have been an extra optical sensor pulse detected. Any button can be pressed to clear the error, or pressing the extra cycle button to advance motor to clear error can be pressed as well. For error code number 2, this refers to an error type where the regeneration has failed. This can occur when, or the cause of this can be when the system or valve has not regenerated for more than 99 days or 7 days if the control type has been set to day of week. The reset and recovery for this particular error code can be performing a manual regeneration to reset the error code. This can be done by pressing the extra cycle button for 5 seconds. Error code number 3. This specifies a memory error, and the cause of this could be a control board memory failure. To reset or recover out of this error code, what can be done is performing a master reset and reconfiguring the system via the master programming mode. After reconfiguring the system, you can step the valve through a manual regeneration, and if the error continues, we advise that customer support is contacted. Error code number 4 specifies an error type where there's a fail-safe error. The cause of this could be where the valve has failed to find a position within the span of 1 minute. A reset or recovery step that can be taken is unplugging the unit, plugging it back in, and if the error continues, call technical support. The 5th section of this tutorial video will cover some preventive maintenance tips along with Pure Aqua's rebuild kit. So to begin with the valve body here, a few things that can be replaced maybe annually or every 2 years would be the power head and control board. These have a lot of moving parts and electronics, and if these are replaced before they fail, it would prevent any downtime for each application. In addition, we would recommend replacing these yokes and connections every few years to ensure the O-rings are sealing properly and all connections are leak-free. Now, on the inside of the valve, there are some seals that can be also replaced in case the valve is leaking during backwash or regeneration. Now, replacing these seals would require the valve getting taken apart and the new seal kit inserted as shown in the operation manual. This wraps up our Learning Center video, and we thank you for watching.